What was that? I'm assuming. Welcome everyone to the Provo Municipal Council Provo School Board joint meeting. We appreciate School Board Superintendent Patel being here. It's always good to be able to discuss issues that affect both of us and be able to collaborate on things where we can. And so we appreciate you all being here. It is 12:10 on Thursday, February 4th, 2016. We're meeting in the Municipal Council chambers at 351 West Center Street in Provo. And we will begin the meeting with a roll call. If you don't mind starting us, Mr. Parker. Kim Santiago.
George Stewart. Dave Connect. Gary Winterton. Dave Martin.
Shannon Colson, School Board.
Paz Murray.
Julie Rash, School Board.
Keith Patel.
Michelle Kafusi.
Jim Pedersen.
Janine Weiss.
Matt Phelan.
Great, thank you. We will have an opening prayer and a blessing on the food. If Mr. Stewart, would you mind offering that? Thank you.
Our dear Father, which art in heaven, we, a few of thy servants and servants of this city, bow our heads in humble gratitude for all of our many blessings. We would ask, Father, for thy protection on the city and its residents, and please bless us in this meeting, that we might do things that would be in harmony with what thou would have us do for Provo, Utah. We ask you also, Father, to bless this food, that it might nourish and strengthen our bodies, that we might have the health and strength and wisdom that we need in our callings and in our responsibilities. And we say this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So we will begin with our first item, but I'd first invite Mr. Peterson, if you'll start, if you'll start the line of food, and then we'll just go down the table. And please just get up and get your food and come back, and then we'll keep the meeting going that way. So the first item of business is a discussion regarding the safety concerns related to railroad crossings and trains stopping for long periods of time. And this item will be...
We're having a little technical difficulty so he's going to retry it.
Okay.
So if you want to go on the second line.
Okay.
Your point on.
Okay, thank you. So we have, while we're trying to get the video prepared for that, we'll go on to the next item. Okay, well, it's up to you. If you
No, that's great.
want to
I would
wait for
like
it?
to see it, yeah.
Okay.
If it's not too big of a deal, I think it's important.
I think they'll be able to get it up. We just
Okay.
need another minute.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
That's great.
okay. We'll go on to item 2 and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So the second item is a discussion on how the housing mix for different schools affects the school district's ability to provide adequate support for those schools. And this was prompted by a prior discussion that we had with the school board about, in particular, the Franklin neighborhood, Franklin School. And you had mentioned a concern about having concentrations of low income in any one area. And that's been a concern of the city council members as well, is how do we distribute that so that the neighborhood can handle so that it's a vibrant neighborhood, so that it's a vibrant school, so that there's enough support and adequate support at school as well. It affects school, it affects the neighborhood, it affects just the vibrancy of the area as well. And if you look at demographic maps, there's a large concentration in the Franklin area. And so we wanted to get your ideas on how to kind of narrow it down a little bit. How does that affect the school district? How does that affect Franklin in particular? Are there other schools throughout the city that we should be concerned about that also are having a hard time managing maybe there could be a better mix and an easier way to support everybody involved?
I think anytime you guys recognize what brings high mobility to an area, or what brings low income issues, that students, their needs are higher, and each school has the same number of staff members. And so when you have a population of students that requires more, obviously it's going to put a pull on those resources. And I think, yeah, we absolutely see that in Franklin. We see it in the Provo Peaks. We have seven Title I schools in the district, and that's all based on the free and reduced lunch counts, and so we can identify which schools. And I think our schools actually do pretty well. But I think to ignore that those issues exist is to our detriment. But we manage. I don't know that any of our schools are really struggling, but I would say anytime we can spread out those difficult circumstances across the city, because the neighborhoods can, you go to Franklin, a Franklin PTA meeting is going to look very, very different than an Edgemont PTA meeting, for example. And the struggles that are going on, I walked through Timpanogos Elementary with the principal a couple months ago, and there were children that were coming up to her, and she's like, oh, and she'd send them into her office. And she's like, he doesn't get breakfast, and he doesn't get food in the morning, so he comes in here when he gets hungry, and I give him stuff. Things like that are going on in some of our schools, and I do think our personnel manages it pretty well. But if we start putting more and more high-density, low-income housing around those schools, the schools are certainly going to feel the impacts of it. Does anybody else want to add?
Yes, I do. Because I think there's a fine balance between enough and too much, because it serves the population of Provo well if there's a mix in each of the areas. Because then those who are stable and secure families can give support and aid to those who, need a little boost. And so I think if you overwhelm any system with the
High need.
the free and reduced lunch thing, it becomes very difficult to meet their needs. And so.
And we've done that, haven't we?
So,
Or have we? Are we still at the tipping point, or are we already, in some schools, we're beyond?
well, it depends on what you do in Southeast Provo and Southwest
Right.
Provo. It seems like they get hit the hardest.
Well,
There's not too many.
We can talk like percentages.
There's not too many Title I.
And I wish I had these numbers off the top of my head. The Title I numbers for like Franklin, is Franklin what, 93?
Franklin's going to be around 90. Timpanogos is going to be up in the high 80s.
That's the percentage of children that qualify for the free and reduced lunch.
of that?
Oh, absolutely. We can get you any of those numbers. That would be
Yeah.
absolutely.
If I can add to that, I think the challenge is, and I think this is both a good thing and a challenge for us. We have we have a lot of very considered people in Provo who are willing to step up where public funds fall short. And so I just saw something the other day about free dental screenings for high poverty schools, where some students, I think in the dental assistance program from UVU, I think that's what it is, I'm trying to remember, will come into schools and make their services available for families and kids. We've got a lot of that going on. We've got a foundation that supports with all of the different businessmen and businesswomen who are part of that and community members support our schools. The challenge on this is that where you have poverty, you frequently have something else. So we have a lot of English language learners, ASL, kids who are coming here from families where English is not the main language that's spoken in the home. And so there are a lot of things that we deal with as part of the complex picture. We also struggle, in all honesty, in this state. The minority populations are the single biggest growing population in this state, and yet we are funded as if it were 20 years ago. And so I'm not asking you to do anything about it, but I think you need to be aware that that's one of our challenges, to be able to bring quality education and other services to students. There are more complexities. There's poverty, there's mobility, all the things that you would expect, but they're there and they're very real. I do think that you do need to know that we get additional federal dollars for all of our schools that are deemed what is called a Title I school. And Title I, if you're not familiar with it, it's a high poverty, low affluent status in a school. And we do get additional funds to bring in other kinds of enrichment activities, additional staff, especially usually additional aides to help students who are struggling in those areas. And I don't think public education is never going to say we have enough money, but we do get a pretty good chunk from the feds for Title I, and it does go a long way.
Right, and I think that, yeah, a lot of what Keith is talking about with that extra funding does mitigate some of the issues. But it is things when you're sitting around the PTA room and you have 3 people at one school and you have 50 at another, it's that type of things that the funding doesn't,
Right.
Yeah.
that doesn't overcome. When you have an auction or a fundraiser at one of the schools that might, if we bring in a few $100s versus, oh, we need to get, whatever big expense and we'll go out and spend a couple of weeks and it's hard work, but you can go and you can get that extra support from the neighborhood. It's much more difficult in some neighborhoods than it is in others. The funding, Title I schools do get a significant amount of federal funding that helps, but it's not the neighborhood engagement. That's what some of these Title I schools miss out on.
And we heard from some of our residents last year with a housing project that they were feeling, it's residents in the Franklin neighborhood, that they were feeling overwhelmed. They were feeling like we can't handle more of the same, more subsidized and more low income because we are already spread pretty thin. And so what in your mind, what is that tipping point? What is when you look at the demographic maps, it would be nice to spread this throughout the county, and it's not being spread throughout the county. And so we're the county seat. We have, we have resources here. We have the Community Action Food Bank, the Food and Care Coalition. We have resources that are close by that makes it convenient. But in order for us to be able to handle what does come in and to plan for that well, so that it's not overwhelming any one neighborhood, is really important. But what is that tipping point? What is that where any one area is overwhelmed? Is there a tipping point, or is it just?
In some of those schools, it's been tipped.
Yeah,
It's already there.
So what I would think would be a good thing for you to do is any new project that you develop, have a mix, not just condos or not just single family housing, but kind of have a mix so that it will ensure that there's a good stable population as well as, numbers.
Mr. Harding?
In talking about tipping points in Title I schools, at least up to a few years ago, there was another designation highly impacted. It was a state designation. Do we know why that went away, and was that a good way of looking at these kind of social impacts that we're talking about?
I think that term kind of is used interchangeably sometimes. But I think Title I think it means the same thing.
Title I's kind of become the
It's the
default
official.
term, but it's kind of the same thing.
Okay, for a while, and I think there were four schools, rather than 7, there were 4 that were identified as highly impacted, because it wasn't just in our children receiving free or reduced lunch, it's also that the language, the non-native languages being spoken in the home. It was there were
Right, they factor in all that and.
But listening to what Ms. Rush talked about, that engagement issue, that was something I saw and felt that the Title I funds are definitely helpful and help balance some of those things. But when you have to go out and recruit PTA president.
And what I've seen at some of our Title I schools is you get a really small core, really small, like I'm talking less than a half a dozen people that are willing to jump in and do it. And those people burn out. They burn out. I was the PTA president at Sunset View for 3 years because we couldn't get somebody else to jump in and then can you please come and help, and they'll do it for a couple of years, and then people would flat out say, I took my turn. So you start to, those people that are wanting to be engaged, I jumped this direction, But I think they want to, and they give everything, but they just run out of gas. Because there's not others to kind of come and say, okay, I'll be on a committee this year, but I can't be in charge. But that's not an option at some of the schools. It either exists with you doing it or it doesn't exist.
We sometimes call those anchor families.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In our discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, I think you kind of hit on it. I've seen we've made some growth and progress, but again, we still have a lack of anchor families. And you and I know that in our particular neighborhoods, even though we've got some owner-occupied residences, often they're starter homes, they're so small that within 5 years or so, they're often on their way to a bigger, better, larger home. And so even though we're making progress, we lack a lot of those anchor families that we need that bring that real stability that can really make a significant contribution to the overall community, to the schools as well as the neighborhood.
And I think another thing that you kind of need to bear in mind too with the schools, you have the anchor families in the neighborhoods. Got a lot of those anchor families that opt out of the neighborhood schools because it's too much.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of anchor families in my neighborhood who've said, you know what, I've given it a shot here, and it's just not, like, I don't feel like that they're so focused on these highly impacted families. Yeah, I'm going to take my kid over here. So some of those anchor families might be helping the neighborhood out, but they're no longer helping the school out because they've opted somewhere else. And we see a lot of that. So sometimes the schools are impacted even more so than you might see in the neighborhood.
Mr. Connect?
So 2 questions. One is, what kind of housing as we go forward? We're continually growing and redeveloping, and the Franklin neighborhood plan is looking at future rezoning for adding more high density. So I know we want a healthy mix, and they did show in a pie chart the current mix, and which is about half single family or single family attached, and everything else was higher density. We talk about having a mix, but we never talk about what is, and quantify what's the right mix. And what kind of housing is going to bring us more anchor families. And if it's single family, it has to be big enough so that they actually can stay for a while. I remember my other point.
When you say higher density, it's medium density that was mostly what they've added to the area, and some mixed use.
Well, I mean, there were,
It's higher than single family home, is that what you're saying?
there were anything higher than single family.
Right, I just
was
wanted to.
kind of bundled together, whether it's lower, medium, or high density, whatever.
Mhm.
But I think it's important we try to quantify what is the right mix, if that's possible.
Yeah, and that's really hard because that's almost a categorical.
Mhm.
And so when you're saying that's the right mix, are we trying to get, because if it's quantifiable, it's got to be have numbers and percentages. And I don't know, that's really hard. Kim Hawkins is the principal of Franklin, and she would be a great resource to talk about what, because she lives it every day and would be able to say, you know, what is a good mix? What feels good to you? I think more so than me, or probably anyone sitting here, because she's in there every single day, and we could get her to give us some feedback.
So what was happening on the neighborhood plan that we saw the other night is staff wanted a number of block faces to be in the future rezoned to higher density, which means the single family homes would disappear. And you might lose
Condos.
30 homes and be replaced with 70 or whatever number would be placed the 30 homes, and it would be higher density. And, you know, would it attract anchor families? What would it do to the demographics? What would it do to the school? And so knowing what's going on in the neighborhoods from your point of view, I think is important for us as we go forward, thinking what, if we change the mix of housing, how will it affect you?
To me, the biggest challenge though is the fact that what are you going to put in there? The cost of those homes. You can get great anchor families if the homes are a little bit more expensive. But to get a developer to come in and put high-end homes.
Right, you've got the reality of,
And so that's the reality of the struggle that we face, is it's a challenge with that. So,
This has been on my mind for a couple of years. It's something that kind of keeps me up at night a little bit because I worry about our ITOD right around that transit-oriented development, and there's a lot of high density. It's already pre-zoned for high density, so projects could just go in. And so we have talked as council prior to this council, and we this year it's on our priority list to form a committee, a housing committee, where we actually look at these issues. We bring in people that can help us understand it a little bit better, because when we reached out to the entity that provides low-income housing tax credits as an incentive for building, we asked them, could we limit it to no more than 20% per project or something, or could we just stop that kind of financing for a while, just let us breathe for a little bit and try to manage what we already have and manage it well. And they said, well, you control it with zoning. And we're still a little confused about how we control it with zoning stuff, but let's bring HUD in. Let's bring in some of these groups that can help us understand it a little better. And I would invite a representative from the school board to be on that committee. I think it's very important that we have that piece, that we have that understanding of how this affects the schools and what these decisions would do for our school district. And we're putting this together now. We're going to be talking about it at our work session in a week on Tuesday.
Is that your timeline, Kim?
The timeline is just putting the committee together right now, and then we're going to start inviting these entities to come and just educate us, help us understand how we can do this better. Because currently ORM is putting in a lot of projects, and none of them are low income. And so there needs to be a way, and we do have some tools through home dollars and CDBG dollars that come from the federal government, where we can spread those out throughout the county. And we did spread some to Highland, I believe. Was it Highland? And welcome, Mayor. Sorry. Welcome to the meeting. So anyway, there are some ways through that kind of funding that we can help get other cities, because some cities really want it. They want more because they don't have any. And so we need to identify those areas and help spread it out so we can support what we have, and other cities can help do that as well. But I would encourage any of you that are interested, please contact me, okay, and let me know. And we're forming that committee, and I think that's going to be really important moving forward to be able to
and so much of this is just a balancing act. Mm-hmm. There's got to be balance, because if there's not balance, it shows its ugly head in the worst way. So there's got to be balance.
Yeah.
Isn't it mostly supply and demand driven? I mean, you guys can zone for high-end houses all day long, but if nobody buys them, it doesn't really matter. So we'll build them. And we'll build them. So, I mean, to me, it comes down to things like, I forget the name of the aeronautics company that's thinking about Duncan. You get a Duncan, and no guarantee they're going to run in Provo, but things like that are going to, so you guys have been bending over backwards, I think, to get them in. So things like that, I think, will help in the long run. But more of those sort of incentives, I think, the housing problem will sort of balance a little bit.
If I can add just a couple of quick things. One of the issues, I think, that to the extent that the city has authority on this, one area where you could help us. I know you know what I'm about to tell you. So we have a state hospital here, and we have a juvenile detention center here. And there are a lot of both school districts and cities that have neither of those. We have them both. Because of the county seat or maybe some other reason, there tends to be a gravitation of people who want to have housing for kids who are coming out of jail, or kids who are in transition, this or that, and they want to gravitate toward Provo. And it's not that we don't want to serve them. When you asked the question earlier, we don't even think like that. I don't even know how to respond. We teach every kid who shows up, and we really don't even think about how we'd like to see things be different in terms of the population. We serve the ones who show. And by the way, all of our elementary schools on the school grading this past year received either an A or a B. So we're doing it well. We're not just doing it, but we're doing it really well. and the secondary schools are moving in that same direction now. But the point is, you may get some of these somewhat difficult population proposals and projects that may come to you. At least the request from my perspective would be, please invite us to the table for a discussion about what we feel we can serve and what we feel we can't. And by contrast, you need to know Alpine School District does not have a jail or a state hospital, nor does Nebo. They send their troubled students to us, the smaller of the three districts, and we house them and serve them. So we're doing our part. And I like the perspective of what's happening in Utah County. What's happening in Utah County is a lot of stuff is happening in Provo. And it wouldn't be a bad idea if we were to maybe think those things through for future expansion. Okay.
Thank you. Good point, Mr. Stewart.
One observation that I've seen, maybe from the outside, is that if we pre-zone high density or medium density, it usually goes to low income subsidized housing because that's the most profitable. So if we as the council do that, we pre-zone those areas, you're gonna have problems because those become time-run locations by and large. And so I think it's incumbent on us to be really careful about pre-zoning because once it's zoned and it's multifamily or it's high density, it's gonna go income subsidized because that's where the money is. That's where those tax credits do. So I think it's incumbent on us. I've seen that in just the last year around this area of Provo.
And if you don't zone it that way and people still want to build those, go elsewhere. And that might be okay. I mean, that might be the way you got away, right?
If you can have medium density, low, medium, high density, and assured that it wasn't going to be income subsidized, then you would probably welcome it in many areas. Sure. But once income subsidized, it just creates problems for the schools. At least that's my view.
Sure. That makes sense. Mr. Hardy?
I just want to respond really quick. We're talking about difficulties and whatnot, but I want to commend the job that the board and the district does in educating the population that we have. Talked about sometimes families opt out, but many of the families in my neighborhood have opted in, and it's an easy thing to do because of the quality of programs that we have at Timpanogos is my home school. And that dual immersion program was great for my kids. And sorry. So hats off to you guys. Thank you for what you do and the quality that you provide. And if you want some cheerleaders to try to go after people that are opting out without even trying, and they don't know what they're opting out of, they don't know how much impact that they can have on our local schools if they would just stay in and give it a shot. But people, it's a hard case to make if we don't have the quality in the schools. But fortunately, because of what the district is doing, we have the quality there, and it's an easy case. I can with clear conscience recommend, give it a shot. Give it a shot because we have really good schools, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the discussion, and the invitation is open. So let's talk. The next item. Are we ready for item number one?
Yeah.
Okay. It's up there. So we'll turn it over to.
Hey, now this is just, this leads right in from what we were just talking about. I was coming home a couple months ago, and I know that this topic keeps coming up, and I know you guys aren't necessarily directly responsible for this. But I also know these conversations happen in rooms that we aren't sitting in, and I'm just trying to spread some awareness. This was taken 2 blocks away from Franklin Elementary School a couple months ago. I came upon this scene. That train sat there for more than 30 minutes right after school got out. If you want to just play it, I'm not a videographer, obviously. You hear the whistle going, and this is like 15-second video is all this is. And those kids, when I got there, they were little boys.
I'm telling you.
Running to climb over they sat there for 30 minutes. These kids were 6 and 7 years old, 8 years old. And it's a couple blocks from the school, and it sat there for a half an hour.
And it's in guard or anything there?
It's 2 blocks from the school. Like it's far enough away that nobody from the school knows it's happening really unless they go out and look for it. It's not, and I tried to talk to a few of them, and they said, yeah, it happens all the time. And I didn't, same thing was happening on the other side of the street with the same kids, and there was a mom actually on the other side of that train yelling to her children, don't go back to the school. I will come and get you. But then for her to go and get them, because when it does that, it's blocking 9th, it's blocking 7th, it's blocking 5th, it's blocking 2nd. It's like, there's no way to University. You go all the way to University, or you go all the way around to Center Street. And it just puts my heart in my throat when I see this. And there's conversations about what to do about the railroad tracks and commuters getting backed up. And my husband the other day sent me a text from stuck at the railroad tracks. He says, I'm going to be late. He was so far back that he couldn't even see the train. Like, that's how far the traffic was backed up, and he sat there for almost a half an hour also. And I know that's violating some ordinances somewhere, but anyway, this right here, my husband and me, and like, they can sit there and it's inconvenient and it's annoying and it's frustrating, but this scares the life out of me when I see this. And I saw those little boys, like, within inches on the wheels, because I got there. I got there.
I can't believe they didn't claim.
I got there and I stopped them, like, you guys, what are you doing?
Wow.
Well, but they had already been standing there for 50 minutes, and when you're 7 years old, 15 minutes is your entire afternoon. Like, anyway, so I bring this up mostly because of awareness. Like, it's not okay. And I know this isn't okay to anybody, and I'm not implying that it is. But as conversations happen, and as people talk about what's going on at the railroad tracks, to me, this has to be in the conversation.
Who sent this to us?
Yeah, I sent it to.
I have it all, okay.
Yeah, and again, it's a 15 seconds. Like, I know there's a photo too, but the only reason I videoed it is because the train, like, you couldn't even hear the whistle was going, that horn, and that mom was just screaming, "Stop! Just go back to the school." And
So with the development that's happening down there, I mean, that has happened and possibly will continue to happen. We only have that one viaduct overpass that goes on University Avenue. Isn't there a way that you can, on 500 West, get an overpass so that there's a balance, or some other area in maybe, for the west, somewhere?
We looked at this as the Transportation Mobility Advisory Committee. This is a proposed priority for the council. We haven't got to discussing it yet, but I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think there's many in the community that this impacts. I believe at one point, $20 million had been, I don't know if it's like earmarked, but what had been put in the 5-year plan to build an overpass. It fell apart, money was used elsewhere. But I mean, that's the kind of commitment, $20 million is kind of what we're talking about for an overpass. Overpasses have a lot of other consequences and impact the feel of the neighborhood, which takes us back to our last conversation and whatnot. I'm hoping that we can put together some sort of team to take a look at it. There may be other options that may not just deal with one intersection, but may deal with all of them, but it's a pretty big problem with a lot of wheels, but I'm hoping that we can get some momentum in addressing it.
Well, and I think, really, when that part of town is cut off, it's entirely cut off. Like, there's no, and I live. There's nothing. But it's again, it's not, like, if I get stuck at the train tracks, it's a 10-minute go around either direction. It's not and it's inconvenient, and that's frustrating, and it's, you start talking overpasses. I don't know how any of that would work. It's something, at the very least, even here, pedestrian bridge even, take care of an immediate issue. I don't know. I just know that something, it's when people talk about these concerns, it goes beyond the convenience. It goes beyond, I worry about ambulances getting through. You know, things like that, like, because those trains will sit there, it's not 5 minutes. It's a very long time, and they come through at, you know, between 8 and 9 in the morning, when everybody's trying to go through, and they come through, and, anyway, so.
I'm the South Franklin Community Chair, and I live within a block of this particular area. And it is a problem. I have people coming to me within the neighborhood, voicing their concern. I have a family named Selfridge that's trying to put together a petition. They don't know what they can do because they see the same thing. It's a danger to the kids. Now, kids have gone under the train. It is not something they've seen.
Oh,
They've seen it happen.
They would have that day.
You know, but it's stopped for a long time. And so there's a potential here for some very serious things happening with those children. And they just line up there and and I don't know why it's so long. Sometimes, you know, it's only 5 minutes on occasion, but sometimes it's 30 minutes or more, and it creates a real problem. And so I don't know long-term, but I think it's worth at least looking at and bringing up in, you know, some way, because there's a lot of building going on. There's Gardner and Associates is looking at some buildings going on just north of the boulders. There's some further on down. I mean, there's different things that are going to bring children in because those are 2-bedroom and they need to cross in order to get to the schools. Because South Franklin doesn't have any schools. But everyone in South Franklin, a large number, go to Franklin in order to go to school.
We appreciate your comments. We typically don't take public comment on this meeting, but if you do make some salient points, I appreciate you.
Does anybody have a rapport with the train companies? I mean, is there any reason for Provo City to communicate with them ever?
So, we do.
Or for us?
Should know I in this, but they, so they move trains.
Yeah. They go through our
They
city.
go through intersections all day long, and stop in intersections all day
But stopping is kind of weird.
There's just no sympathy for them on that. They stop trains and they, you know, they were there first. And the tracks were there first and we came and built around the tracks. You mentioned, I'm sure it's a violation of ordinance, it's not.
Really, there's nothing that says they can sit there all day long.
There actually is, Mayor. There is. The challenge is that there's a statutory exemption if there's a mechanical problem. And in every case where we've confronted the railroad, there's been a mechanical problem.
Oh, really?
And it could be on that train, or it could be on another train.
So
We've got to
stop
stop
and wait.
because of the flow. Part of it too is the proximity to the railroad. We have the railroad at Provo. And it's Ryder's Point, there's 20+ tracks. There are train strikes to station in order to do coupling, uncoupling, those kinds of things. But sometimes things back up in the yard. And they'll get a train that's got a mechanical problem and consequently on either side of the yard, things have to stop and wait. And so again, the challenge is if it was just a traffic issue, there is something in our ordinance that allows us to cite the driver. The challenge is enforcing, proving, getting in front of the judge, and if they say, yeah, there was a mechanical failure on a train 3 miles out, and we got stopped because we couldn't move, it's going to get tossed out. And so there's just not very much practically we can do other than continuing to develop a relationship with the railroad and help them be aware that this is a problem. You know, I've been involved with railroad overpasses before in other communities where I've worked, and the railroad's happy to eliminate that grade crossing because they don't like it either. So they'll contribute 5% to the cost.
At least you put a sign up.
Right. Yeah, and so again, so again, when you have a $20 million price tag built in overpass, you know, you can count on $1,000 from the railroad to really help against the cost. So it's and as Councilman Harlan suggests, there are lots of people who oppose those because you create perpetual shade. You tend to drive down the property values in the neighborhood that usually surround the overpass. And so anytime you try to do one, it's a major political battle, and it's hard to prioritize the dollars over other things.
So pedestrian walkway, would that be?
The less pedestrian walkways, that's true.
So they're all over, it's not like they go with it. Yeah.
Mr. Connect?
So Wayne, can you fill us in on the 100-year lease with the railroad?
Well, we do have a franchise with the railroad, and it's basically for their utilization of our rights of way, because actually in this case, we did predate the railroad. The city's ownership of the rights of way in the city predate the city being here. And so, but again, it only regulates their use of our right of way. And it's really, we have a 100-year franchise. We are in the midst of renegotiating that franchise with the railroad. But again, there are some legal limitations imposed by federal law.
So is it coming due now, right now?
What's that?
Is it coming due right now?
Yes, it's actually overdue. So we have been working with the railroad's legal staff and our legal staff to try to come up with a revision to that. If there is the opportunity to get concessions, these are the kinds of things we'll be looking for. But again, we do have some limitations of federal law in terms of what we can do and can't do.
Well, that picture would be compelling.
Yeah, let's,
In your negotiations.
anybody on the other side would have to have a little sympathy for that.
I watch people routinely. I come up 6 South on my way to work in the morning. And routinely, if the train stopped and affirmative passengers were hoping to get across, it is not unusual to watch people just dive over those rail car couplings. In fact, I told the mayor the other morning I was rushing to get to a 7 a.m. meeting, or I would have turned my van around and stopped and picked up 6 of them, taken them the overpass, and come back there. I've done that a number of times before, just to prevent that kind of.
Totally carry a ladder.
Or moving that over the.
Yeah, maybe put ladders along the tracks, I don't know.
The kids would love that.
Something.
It is a tough problem. One of the harder ones we do.
Who's the organization that I have that?
Operation Lifesaver. Yeah, that might be worth an opportunity. They will come and do like a school assembly presentation or a PTA meeting, or they'll take every year they take a group of folks on a train around the track and watch what happens at crossings. To see how many near misses there are. In an effort to convince people that we really need to put an emphasis on safety on the road.
And you can never have too much education. So if you can educate even a small group of the Franklin neighborhood, every little bit helps, but still, I don't think that satisfies and solves the problem, but at least education helps.
Hopefully you wouldn't have a mom on the other side of the track saying, go back to school. I came up to a place where there was a train stop. Educate kids to remember that.
Mr. Harding?
I'm hesitant to even mention this because it's so far out and I don't even know, we haven't looked into it to see how likely this possibly would be, but I think my ideal would be that it's a very long switching yard. And if you're talking about 20 sets of tracks, it's fairly expensive. But on the south end of that is property that's not well developed. And on the north end or the northwest end is this neighborhood. And if there was any way that we could help transfer land, swap land, and just push that whole rail yard maybe 50% further down to the point that very rarely would you get stoppages at these points. Now you don't just solve one intersection, you solve all of those intersections.
Well, my question would be, why are they stopping right there? Is it because that's where they have supplies, tools, stuff to fix what's wrong? Or could they stop somewhere else along the track that doesn't impede roads, that we could have like a little shack there or something with whatever it is they need that they're stopping here for, right? So it seems like that would be less expensive than trying to swap land or trying to, I don't know why they're stopping. It would be good to know, why are they stopping? Why are they stopping there? Because obviously there's something right there that they need. Let's move whatever that is somewhere else.
I think frequently, particularly when there's a mechanical issue, they stop, or they're told to stop and they wait for someone to arrive to repair the problem. And I think it's a railroad, but they tell us at least it's a railroad safety issue. We don't want to proceed any further down the track and risk injury to people that want to stay on the track.
You don't want to risk injury.
Can they stop somewhere else, though, I guess would be the question. Can they stop
Well, the
somewhere?
mechanical couple might be 100 cars up.
Right, these trains are extremely long. I'm stunned at how long they are.
You know, they can, we've counted them sometimes, they
They're
can
huge.
put a bunch of cars
They're
up.
long trains.
So they would, no matter where they are, they're gonna stop roads
Or
somewhere.
if they're blocking this one else, they're blocking 820 north, which is a whole other set of, or sometimes both.
Right. But if there was a spot, well, maybe, I don't know.
One of the challenges we have with regard to Provo is it's the convergence of two main rail lines. You have the line that goes up to Nashville, Canyon, to Springville. You have the line that goes down past Nephi and those lines, and they converge at Provo. So if they're switching from one line to the other, they essentially got to get the entire train up past the switch point and then switch it back over. So that's part of the challenge. It's not just maintaining the trains, it's where they switch from one track to another. And obviously, to do that, they've got to get the entire train past the switch point. The length of some of these trains,
That doesn't sound like a mechanical issue, but I mean.
Well, I think if there's ever an opportunity to talk to somebody who cares about this issue, there you go.
Okay.
Or can't do anything about it.
Right.
We'd love to talk to them too.
We appreciate you bringing
We
this.
can certainly keep in contact with the railroad, that's absolutely helpful.
I just would.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, yeah, we'll go talk to them.
We're putting our best together.
But I also know that conversations, and it is, I saw it on the list, and that this I know a lot of citizens are frustrated with, not this specifically with the kids, but with those crossings being blocked all the time. So I know it's coming up. So my intention here was just to put it on everybody's radar screen that this image is the reality of what it's doing.
Yeah, so thank you, we appreciate you bringing that. It's very telling. So the next item up for discussion is an update on the construction of new schools. We'd just like to hear how things are going.
Okay. Well, in a nutshell, and then Stephanie, I'm going to invite Stephanie up to talk about it a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Our construction update. Keith thinks she'd help out with that. We've got Sunset View and Rock Canyon that are on track to be finished this summer. They look good. If you drive anywhere near either one of those schools, it's kind of exciting. We're in the kind of design phase for Provost and Edgemont, and also Provo High. And that's a real brief nutshell, but Stephanie, do you want to just come on?
Yeah.
Stephanie and McKay, or not Stephanie, Marcia and McKay both had to be somewhere else today, so.
Currently, Rock Canyon and Sunset View, as Julie said, are pretty much on track. Rock Canyon was a little bit behind for a little while because of some of the issues we had with working through city engineering, as you likely know. We got those settled. And I think last year from our facilities directors were, rather than 7 weeks behind, we're a couple weeks behind now. So we're still playing a little bit of catch up there, but I think we'll get there by the time it's summertime. We need to move. We're on budget with those two schools. One's a little over, one's a little under. So we're pretty much kind of right where we expected to on those two schools. So we're pretty pleased with that. As you know, Provo High, we decided to move to the west side site. So we're working through design on Provo High, making some slight adjustments to the existing design we were going to use on the University Avenue site, and making some changes. Working through the final budget numbers on that. West London Construction is CMGC on that project. Moving forward on that all over again because of slight change and scope changes, but West London and so they're working through budgets and finalizing design on Provo High, which final, I don't know, maybe in another month or so that we can start looking at going out to bid and get grappled by May or June. We are working with MHTN architects on the next two elementaries, Edgemont and Provost. So we're just in the starting phases of that. We have a design we're looking at for both of those schools. We're meeting with neighborhoods, getting some input from teachers and principals on what the needs are and what changes we may or may not need to make to those designs that we chose. So we're working forward with that. We're hoping to hopefully have those done and maybe go to bid by April or May on those two projects and break ground by June as soon as school's on. That's where we're at.
What are you seeing in construction costs?
The estimates they're giving us they keep showing inflation, but what we're hearing with bids that are actually happening in other districts is there's not as much inflation as we're estimating. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. You know, I was looking at the bids on Rock Canyon and Sunday this morning and revisiting those numbers, and I'm like, you know, we actually came in pretty good square footage wise on those. I don't recall exactly what they were, but full construction, I think we were somewhere about 160 a square foot, you know, with demo and everything. So we came in a little bit lower on those than we expected to. With site issues that drove up the cost on the one school, so that's why we're just coming in and budget this. So we're hoping that maybe the inflation they keep talking about and expecting won't hit us.
So with Provost Elementary, we had a citizen the other day remark that when they have like soccer games and activities on the field, that instead of the cars and I guess the parents parking down in the parking lot, they'll park just on Utah Avenue there on both sides, and the kids would just be running in and out and back and forth and on the main street or on the street. So on the redesign, I don't know if you'll have a different setup, maybe a way to access the parking lot from Utah Avenue, or if that's any consideration.
That hill, that grade,
Too much.
and where the parking lot would be, the new parking lot to that road is too much.
Okay.
It would be too expensive.
So that,
But you know what, my kids did the, that parking all along that street
yeah.
to play soccer, and it's, yeah, I think it's not as busy as times as others.
So you don't think it's a real issue?
It wasn't for my children, because I taught them not to run out in the street, but I don't know. Could be others.
Our architects on all our schools are really doing a very good job of figuring out how to place these new schools when the existing schools really are in the best place for the parts that we're sitting on. So that's a challenge for us at some schools, is you're pushing us back too far, you're pushing us forward too far, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate costs and also get the best site layout that we can.
And we'll continue to meet with neighborhoods too. We'll have additional meetings.
We do have 2 more meetings for both Edgemont and Provost parents on the 17th, the 10th and the 17th.
I'll double check and we'll get you those dates.
Well, it's the 10th and the 17th for Provost, and then it's the day after for Edgemont.
So you'll have to teach it.
So,
Just yesterday, we were in a meeting with architects talking about exactly the issues that came up at those meetings last week. So they're being talked about, and like Shannon said, they explained the grading and all that. There's some complications. I don't know that we'll be able to resolve everything, but there's not anything that's coming forward at those meetings that's not being talked about and that we aren't working on
if we could get
addressing.
that federal land, that'd be a good argument.
Yeah.
We can, but we have talked about that, and we are lucky enough to, I don't know, I shouldn't say that, we won't say that.
But we're very lucky.
There is another parking lot close by.
Mr.
It might
Hardy?
not be our parking lot, but it's.
You mentioned about their needs that are coming up. Would that be open to community members who go to children at school as well, or is it? So it's.
The two meetings she was talking about are going to be PTA and community council representatives.
Yeah.
And then there's another public meeting after that.
Right, it's another nighttime.
To open up, we'll try to follow all the
I wanna
feedback
say the
and make the changes and then come back and say, all right, what do you
I
think?
think those dates are posted on our website.
25th and 26th and 24th and 25th is what, I remember the 25th is one of the dates.
We'll for sure publicize them.
But anyway, that'll be on your website.
They should be on our website.
Other questions on this item? Okay, we'll go on to the final item. Us and potential city involvement in the sale of Provo High. If there's anything that you can share on that.
That's the big question.
Yeah.
What can we share? The board has entertained offers from 2 different prospective buyers. Lots of details of very different kinds of offers. The board is working their way through those. Immediately following the announcement of the move back in early December, we did have some more interest that was expressed by other prospective buyers, including one very notable developer in the state. We told them at that time that we were going to try to finish out with the two that were at the table at that time, and we're probably getting to a point where we'll know that either one of them may be moving forward to establish a deal, or maybe neither of them will, and then we would potentially look at some of those other potential offers. But the process right now is that we're just sifting through it. My job is to make sure we're legal and provide all the information the board wants. And I would say we're getting closer, but I would not say that there's an imminent decision in the next little while. It's taking a little longer than I think any of us figured that it would.
It's a big deal. Yeah, here's a question. I probably, like all of us, asked frequently. What are you comfortable with us representing or telling people that would ask us what the status is? I think there's a feeling that we know or should know and things. So let me tell you what I tell people, and you tell me if it's a good answer, if it might be modified. That you made a decision to move to the high school, and that basically, as you just said, that you're evaluating potential offers to purchase. Is that the right answer?
Yes.
There's another rumor that's been floating around. It was from a local reporter who said that a reliable source had stated that the property was worth $56 million. And I have to tell you, if that was the case, then we would have established a deal and signed it already, probably long ago. It's well below that. In fact, we're right now waiting for some more information to clarify the property values. So I think you're right on in terms of.
And it's clear the decision's being made to move.
Yes.
Which
We came to a realization prior to making that decision that the longer we waited on making that decision, those inflation costs were making the price of the rebuild, they were exploding. And we knew that every day we delayed that was going to create problems budget-wise. We also know and recognize that rushing the decision on selling the property was the worst thing we could do as far as the interest of the school district goes. So that's why we opted to separate those two decisions. We reached a level of comfort with the ability to be able to sell that property for the price we need to get, and that we felt comfortable that we could make those decisions separately. That's what we did. And now we are most intent on getting the right deal for the property as opposed to the quickest deal that may not necessarily be in the district's best interest. So that's where we're sitting.
Mr. Knight.
Just on a theoretical basis, the property is currently zoned PF and used for public purposes. If it stayed that way, that is one outcome. If it went to commercial, retail, that's another. If it went to housing, that's another, or I suppose there could be a mix. Each of those scenarios has implications for the city's budget, for city services, and I'm sure for you as a school district, if it turned out that people were living there, what does it do to your demographics? So I guess in this case, we deal with some hard things and you deal with other hard things.
I keep waiting for the easy stuff to come. And since I've been on the board, I haven't seen that day, so, but yes.
Question I sometimes get asked by citizens is, do we have any input in the type of use, or if the eventual buyer is going to require a zone change? Are we, at what point are we involved in that process? So.
And I think all of that would I don't know that I can answer that completely, but I think that much of that would come after we're finished with the negotiations, and then the buyer would then need to see what they need to do to get the zoning that they may need, and at that point, that's completely off, out of our hands. That's something we're mindful of, but I don't know that we can affect that really.
I think you might be able to, in the fact that I think you're not gonna get a sale completed before they have some options. They're gonna give you, they're gonna say, we need some options, we need to go to the city. And so I guess before we can actually determine what we wanna do. So as you talk with them, just encourage them to come to us as quickly as we can, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think I asked that question in one of our meetings, so I think that's on everybody's mind, including these potential buyers.
Any other questions? Appreciate
I've got one. It's tangentially related to this. As another one of these meetings before I was on the council, I was invited to come and talk. At that time, I think it was determined that Dixon Middle School had higher need for being rebuilt in Provo, and later on found some additional structural problems with Provo. So I got swapped around, but at that time, I think the question was, would it make sense to rebuild Dixon Middle School in place? And I was invited to come and speak to both board and the council, and said, obviously we need to do what's best in the interest of the children and all that, but if there's any way that we can keep Dixon Middle School where it's at, it really is kind of the center of our community there, and helps. It's an amenity that helps those anchor families and helps attract additional anchor families into that area. Then the schools had to be swapped on that list for rebuild, and then kind of discussion came up with Provo High. Does it make sense to build in place, or does it make sense to move it somewhere else? And the decision was made, and I do think when we're talking about Franklin, we're talking about some of the other highly impacted schools, which I believe Spring Creek. Anyway, so they're not all just the central schools, but many of them are. It does impact by not having the high school nearby. It does impact that. So we got to the point with Provo High that it seemed like there were no good options to keep it in place. Dixon Middle School, I think the assumption is we're about 10 years out before it needs to be rebuilt. I can just kind of put out to both groups if we can be looking ahead and setting ourselves up. If we decide that it makes sense to keep Dixon Middle School where it is, and I would plead with you to seriously consider that, because it does impact the health and the vibrancy of these neighborhoods. If that makes sense, are there any steps we can be taking now so that in 10 years we have better options if the district decides that it makes sense to keep in place? So I just want to put that plea out in mind.
Well, and I'll only add to that I think that when the Dixon conversation was happening, I think that was one of the reasons that we thought it would be okay to wait, because I don't think there's anybody on the board that was interested in moving Dixon. So it's definitely on our radar screen for sure. No one's interested in doing that, and I think that'll be a decision for a future board to make. And we don't want to move that school. And there's not much else I can say about that today, because that'll be a decision on the road. But yeah, and I think you're right too, to anticipate exactly and see what we can do.
IHC realized, hey, we're going to want to expand in 20 years. We need to start taking steps now.
Exactly.
And obviously, you can't buy the future board, but
you can make the decision easier for them.
Give them options.
Right.
Provide.
I mean, somebody could buy the block next to Dixon and donate it to the school.
Yeah, there you go. Let's do that. You work on that. We're going to put Taz in charge of that committee.
Well, I'll just kind of speak off the cuff on that one and just say, one of the things that we have to do as a district is we have to submit all of our plans for rebuilds to the state, and the state is becoming more and more involved in making sure certain things are happening, whether it's OCR compliance or other regulations that they've laid out. Right now, they don't exist as regulations, but could at the time, but the general rule for middle school is that it be built on about 15 acres, plus or minus maybe 1. So the Dixon block is 7.33 acres. So Taz's comment actually is, it has a lot of practicality to it, because if one of the neighboring blocks could somehow be converted to a site that could house Dixon. I mean, we can't predict where we're going to be 10 years from now. With the projections for growth on the west side, it may or may not make sense to retain Dixon where it is, but in terms of serving the most students within walking distance. But at least in terms of where we would locate the school in its current community, it would be really helpful to have a little bit more space to accomplish that.
So these steps need to be taken now.
Yeah, I think the real challenge, though, honestly, is the discussions going on here. Shannon's the longest timer on the board, but I don't know about city council laws, but one board cannot bind another board in the future, and so this is simply a conversation as opposed to a series of commitments.
I know that as a member of a former board, the idea of building Timpanogos where it is rather than building it on Dixon's site, and that it was with the intent to keep Dixon where it's at. So, but as he says, that's a discussion for a future board. But that was the intent of the past.
But a former board purchased land on the west side with the thought that this.
It was donated.
It was a mixture.
It was part.
Okay. So the point is sometimes these decisions are made on binding, but provide options.
That's the key.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and I know from Wasatch parents, there is a sentiment that we don't want to be forgotten. Either there were 7 schools that needed to be rebuilt, and there are 5 that are being rebuilt, and Wasatch still has the same issues that they had, before with safety, and we still get notes home that have your kids wear their coats to school because they're going to have to wear them in school because the heating is broken. And so there, I mean, so the issues still exist, and I think that the parents want to know that we're on the radar, and that that's going to be addressed. And I know there's a concerted effort to get Wasatch, rebuilt as soon as possible too. But I think there's just having that confidence and knowing that it's still on your brains is helpful as well, to be able to relay that message back to them.
For those of you who are doing tax planning for retirement, I mean, the school is a great place to donate that. Just leave that out there. Tax deductible.
The foundation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
We appreciate you coming, and
thank you.
To be able to have these conversations, I think, is invaluable. So appreciate your time and to be able to share some of these things. And so
thank you for hosting us.
Yeah. So with that, I would have a motion to adjourn. I don't know if we need to do that for this meeting. Maybe not.
Brian.
Because it wouldn't hurt, just in case.
So moved.
Motion to it, yeah. So thank you, Mr. Wenderson. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, second, and all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. It was Gary Winterton, and then Shannon Paulson was seconded, I believe. It was unanimous, I believe.